country, pointing out that property rights and freedom are inseparable, and you cannot have the third unless you continue to be entitled to the first two. He said that in 1977, before he was president. There's a Supreme Court case from 1972, which I'm fond of quoting into various courts, that says the right to enjoy property without unlawful deprivation, no less than the right to speak or the right to travel, is in truth a personal right. In fact, a fundamental interdependence exists between the personal right to liberty and the personal right in property. Neither could have meaning without the other. Or, as George Washington put it more pithily, freedom and property are inseparable. You cannot have one without the other. Let me give you a little example of a story I'd like to tell about a judge, retired judge in Monterey, California, and a little bit of trouble he ran into. It sort of brings home the point when we talk about freedom and property being inseparable. That's kind of abstract. People say, well, that's nice, it sounds nice, but what do you mean by that? This is what I mean. This gentleman's trying to build an outbuilding on his property. And he had gone through the permits, and he was outraged by how bad the permitting process was. A single guy trying to get a single building, and so he would call up Monterey County and said, I need such and such. And they would tell him, well, you have to come down to the county headquarters, and we'll deal with it then. So he goes down to county headquarters the same day, and he gets behind the desk, finds a person to talk to him on the phone. He said, well, do you have an appointment? No, I just talked to you. We have to make an appointment before we can see you. Things like that, the runaround going on and on. So finally, he got nearly finished. The building was practically up, only a few hammers, a few nails left to go in it. And he wrote a little article for the Monterey Pinecone, the local daily. And the article went through the litany of abuses that he had suffered on the hands of the building department. Well, it got published on a nice Thursday morning, and he felt pretty good about that until he got back to his house, where he found that the building had been red tagged by the planning department. And he's been fighting that for about 5 years. So there is an interdependence between property and liberty. Now, I have to get ready, because I understand the fairness doctrine is going to come back. So I need to give both sides of the story. So this is a quote from Peter Burrell, former president of the Audubon Society. It's very simple. We reject the idea of property rights. Okay? A Nobel Peace Prize laureate said this: the environmental problems of our society are the consequences of too much protection given to individual and property rights. That is, of course, is from Al Gore in his book, Earth and the Balance. And finally, capitalism is destroying the earth. This quote was from Helen Caldicott, founder of the Physicians for Social Responsibility. And this quote continues, and is a point that I especially like to bring in when I'm in Florida. She continued, Cuba is a wonderful place. What Castro's done is superb. Okay, so that's the other side of the story. Now, in California, we like to think we are the leaders and the groundbreakers in so many things. And I am so glad to see Florida following so quickly and thoughtfully in the footsteps of California. So here is a quote from Justice Janice Rogers Brown, former Supreme Court Justice in California, now in the D.C. Circuit. She wrote in an opinion, a dissent to an opinion in 2002, but private property, already an endangered species in California, is now entirely extinct in San Francisco. Thus, she quotes John Adams, the lamb has been committed to the custody of the wolf. San Francisco has redefined the American dream, where once government was closely constrained to increase the freedom of individuals, now property ownership is closely constrained to increase the power of government. Where once government was a necessary evil because it protected private property, now private property is a necessary evil because it funds government programs. And that was a case dealing with exactions, one of my favorite areas of litigation. That is, you go to the city, the county, asking for a permit, and the city and the county does not see a developer in front of them, they see an ATM machine. And we had a case many years ago in 1987, the Nolan case. You've probably heard of that. The Nolans wanted to build replace a beachfront. They had a little bungalow, 1 story, they wanted to replace it with a 2-story bungalow, and they were told they could only do that if they gave away 1/3 of their beachfront property to the state as the first step on a beautiful new park for the state of California. Nolan said, sure, I can't fight City Hall. He signed the permit. It's a true story. He gave it to the Coastal Commission. Went to work that day. He happened to be a city attorney for LA. And he opened the newspaper and saw a case where Pacific Legal Foundation had fought and won a case against the California Coastal Commission. He called us up and said, hey, I might have a case for you. And he told us about the exaction, the permit. We said, yeah. He said, I just signed the permit and gave it in to them today. And we said, sorry, it's kind of late. You've agreed to this. And he said, well, maybe I'll see if I can do something about it. And he did. He went down back to the Coastal Commission headquarters and went to the lady behind the desk and said, excuse me, I gave a permit to you earlier today, and I think I made a mistake on it. And she looked through the papers and, yeah, there it is. And he looked at it and he said, yeah, I did make a mistake. And he went outside and did this. And he gave us a call. And we had a case. So we took that and we lost all the way through the California courts. We actually had an initial victory at the trial court, but we lost in the Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal said our arguments had no merit. And it was essentially thinking that we were bordering on being frivolous. California Supreme Court didn't take the case, but we don't give up. We took it to the U.S. Supreme Court, and we argued the case there that saying that the government had no right to take his property in exchange for his exercise of his right to develop his property. The Coastal Commission said, but no, he's causing a terrible impact on the property. What he is doing is creating a psychological barrier to people realizing the existence of the coast. Now, in California, in Florida, well, no, you laugh, but this is serious stuff. Because in California, you're driving down the coast, and you know, if the drugs haven't kicked in yet, and you're looking over where the ocean is, and you see houses, you have a psychological barrier attack. It's frightening. And so the idea is by giving up the beachfront property, that would ameliorate the psychological barrier problems that people are facing. But Justice Scalia, who wrote the opinion, is no dummy. He said, no, wait a minute. People driving down the ocean, they're driving down Highway 1, looking over to the ocean, they're going to see this house, but they're not going to see the beach that he has to give up in return. So how is that ameliorating the psychological barrier problem people are having? Well, maybe you could build a little viewing platform, that would do it, but that's not what they asked. So he called what they were asking an out-and-out plan of extortion and threw it out. Ever since then, we've been involved in a number of cases where governments have tried to get money, land, and other things in exchange for building permits. I don't have time to go into these cases now, but we have a couple in Florida that are going on, or we hope to have go on. In one case, in the city of Northport, there is a requirement that you pay 50 cents to 75 cents a square foot for road development, because the idea is that development hurts roads, because the roads are already in bad shape. So they're going to take the money that they're collecting now, which is about $1 million so far, and somehow transfer them into the past so they could fix the roads that were broken in the past. Wait, I used to read too much science fiction as a kid, but somehow Northport's got it figured out. So anyway, we're challenging that one, having fun there, and we're also looking and trying to find a good case in Collier County, because we're quite concerned about exactions there that are being collected to develop a courthouse. The exactions are so hard that it's made development very difficult, very expensive. So exactions and those sort of developers of ATMs, one of the key focuses that we are trying to have in our cases. I mentioned that property rights are an endangered species in California, which is my perfect segue, or semi-perfect segue, into talking about the Endangered Species Act. Mike talked to you a little bit about the Fisher case in the Perdido Keys, where the owners of property that have been destroyed by the hurricane are not able to rebuild. And what